All right, my old friend Wesley Morris is here. We used to work together at a place called Grant Lane a long time ago. He's at the New York Times right now. Oscar nominations are Monday, and you usually come on right before the Oscars, and we try to make sense of the year. And there's usually a framework to it, and you have a feeling, and you can look at like Box Office Mojo and see what did really well, and you can look at these different lists. My schedule's all off. We're in mid-March. Usually we're doing this in January. I'm looking at Box Office Mojo right now. Bad Boys for Life made $206 million. It made 4 times as much money as any movie ranked 10th and down for 2020. I don't know what that says. But how do you make sense of this year? I think this is the weirdest Oscars year we've ever had. I don't think that's a controversial opinion, but how does it set in your brain as you think about it?
Well, it makes me feel like why don't you just throw Bad Boys into the mix for Best Picture too?
Why not?
It's funny because that was it wasn't officially the last movie theater movie, but it was definitely, I think it was the last big hit before the pandemic was officially declared a pandemic.
Actually, Sonic the Hedgehog was the last big hit.
Okay,
just to be fair. Just to be fair.
Right. Yes. I didn't see that in a movie theater though.
No.
That doesn't mean it didn't happen. I'm just marking myself.
Things stop with The Way Back comes out right as the pandemic's hitting, and The Way Back gets screwed, and The Way Back has also been lost in the Oscar stuff. I thought Affleck would get at least like people kicking the tires on him. No way. But yeah, so from March, we're in the year anniversary of the pandemic. From the last 12 months, it just goes aside.
I think the thing that's really interesting to think about is what would have, like, let's just say nothing changes, right? Like, let's just say, okay, how do we tastefully, respectfully speculate about this? Let's say that there is no pandemic. My heart goes out to the 550,000 people who've lost their lives. There definitely was a pandemic. But saying that it doesn't happen from the standpoint of what you and I are talking about with movies, but every single one of the movies that we're talking about right now is an Oscar is Oscar eligible because it fell within the eligibility window of a calendar year.
All right, so use Tenet as an example for this. Let's say Tenet makes $240 million.
Yep.
Does that change how we see it as an Oscar movie?
Probably. I think that The Way Back, I think there's some line of demarcation that happens in terms of the way people are thinking about this. Because I think what happened is nothing became real until the studios began to take the Oscar part of the calendar year seriously. And so everything that predates, say, what movie I'm looking at my list here. What movie would be the movie that says to everybody, okay, I guess the Oscars are really happening? I think it was like Venice. I think Nomadland winning in Venice. If that's a thing that actually happened and not my imagination. I think it was that the other international festivals began to have events and like prizes were being given.
Right. And people are like, wait, we had a movie season?
Yeah.
This happened?
Not only this happened, like this is happening. And I think that it basically obliterated any movie that came out before September.
I agree with that.
And so what you're left with is all of these things that, like, I don't use the term Oscar bait, but this is the year that if you're ever going to use that term and don't like using it, this is the Oscar baitiest year. It's actual bait for Oscars.
But along to that point, like, I've had a lot of trouble even knowing what an Oscar movie was. Like in years past, we had this whole infrastructure, right? And there was like the Tenet side of stuff where it was Inception 7 years ago or whatever. It was always like those big budget movies that were also really well done. Maybe those were The Dark Knight. But then there were those other ones they would come out September, October, November, December, A24, like smaller studios. And you could kind of tell, here we go. This is an Oscars one. When stuff gets released on Amazon or Netflix, I have no way to discern. Like One Night in Miami, it was just like, oh, Regina King directed something.
Ding, ding, ding,
I guess
ding.
this is I guess this is a thing. But then it's like, oh, this actually would have been an Oscar movie if we had a normal year. And you and I are in this for a living. You're in it way more than I am. But if I can't really tell the difference, that tells me most people probably can't tell the difference because I'm relatively normal for this.
I have one thought about this, and it's not controversial. It is basically Roma. It is the thing that you knew was going to happen actually being forced to happen because of the circumstances. But this conversation that nobody really wanted to be having about what a movie was, that Amazon was forcing Hollywood to really reconsider, is a real question. It's not Amazon. I'm sorry, Netflix, right? Roma's a Netflix movie. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure about that.
Roma's Netflix.
You know, the thing about Roma was that people were freaked out that this was auguring a thing. Well, I mean, it wasn't auguring it. It seemed to be dooming something that everybody was already worried about. And so Roma happens. It's a Netflix movie that plays in theaters only more or less for Oscar consideration. And that, I mean, I'm not even sure if the first thing is Roma, but it just becomes this wave of things, mostly from Netflix at this point, where you don't know whether that Coen Brothers movie, by the way, for instance, which I liked, that had that really good Zoe Kazan performance. You don't know what is it? The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yep.
And I didn't know what to do about that. There was playing at one theater, I believe, in New York City. And I didn't know would it be expanding to other theaters at some point? I think all of those questions about what a theatrical release was versus something that winds up on a streaming platform. I mean, I don't know what they're worried about out there now. I don't know what the worry is. If Warner Brothers is willing to just release its entire slate for the year on its streaming platform, because that's where all the business model energy is to get people to subscribe to it. I mean, things are definitely different.
I'll give you the worry, and then I'll give you the thing that's probably appealing to them. The worry is that there's no way to actually specifically say, here's how this movie did. So like, look at The Way Back, for instance, right? So
yes,
The Way Back comes out in March. Let's say the pandemic's not for another 6 weeks.
Right.
Let's say The Way Back makes $120 million and is the number one movie in America for 3 straight weeks and leads to this whole Ben Affleck, he's back again. And you get all this push from it and people know what that is. And then when we get to Oscar time, we'd be like, oh, the Ben Affleck, that movie, well, it did pretty well. And you have that. The flip side is all of these streamers can just lie about, first of all, they can lie how the movie did. Second, they can control how the movie did by how they promote it on their platform. So
this is my
Amazon was like
one
night in Miami. And it's constant. And it felt like a much bigger thing than it would have been if it had just been released in a theater. So they have extraordinary control for better and worse. And from their standpoint, I would argue that in a weird way, that's probably more beneficial to them because what is successful to them? Well, what's successful is people came to our platform and they watched something. Well, what do they watch? They basically watch what we told them to watch. That's why Ginny and Georgia became so successful the last 2 weeks, right? Yeah. It's why we had two Fire Festival documentaries and 2 different platforms that everybody watched. It's because people go to Netflix, Amazon, whatever, and the top thing that they see, they're like, what's that?
Yep.
So that the amount of control they have over kind of telling us what to watch, to me, completely changes the Oscars conversation.
Absolutely, yes. Except I still think that, I mean, okay, so I've got one major disappointment, which is that I really thought that once you got to September and the Oscars did seem like they were happening and you're pushing back the release, you're pushing back the eligibility window to whenever it was, February or the end of January, I think. And then, I'm thinking, okay, well, the critics groups are still going to do the work that they do in terms of handing out awards and, beginning to reframe this conversation. But then the Golden Globes nominations are going to happen later than that. I thought this is a real taste-making free-for-all. And this will allow anybody filling out a ballot to just go hog wild and just write in any old thing that you liked that you weren't told is the best and the best of the year. You get to actually be honest about what your tastes are. And there might be some surprises in that.
Or what your agenda is.
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah. But that did not. So, okay, for instance, I saw this movie that I really loved over the summer that came out in the early fall called The 40-Year-Old Version by this woman named Rada Blank. It is, for anybody who's wondering about what to do about their Woody Allen relationship, I would say let this woman make 10 more movies and that problem will be solved for you. Because
wait, are people still wondering what to do about their Woody Allen relationship?
They're out there.
Okay. I think I know what to do.
I think a lot of us know what to do. But
even my mom, who Manhattan's her favorite movie, she's like, I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that I thought Rada Blank would be a shoo-in for any number of these prizes, just based on people seeing it on Netflix, which is where it lived, and being like, this is charming, extremely well made, and this woman's a star. She's a star, and she's a star in this very specific movie director, movie actor sort of way that does not really exist anymore. And by the time the movies begin to go through the filter, that 40-year-old version is not one of the things that winds up in anybody's cup.
Same thing for The Five Bloods. It almost peaked. It peaked. I saw it so long, I don't babes barely remember it. It was a year ago.
But that's a pre-September movie, right?
Yeah.
That The Five Bloods is suffering from a number of things, I think, in terms of not being part of this end of the year, or I don't even, what is the end of the year? In terms of being part of this Academy Awards conversation. Thing number one is it came out, I think it was the first major movie by a great director that the reviews, that had these great reviews, and people really did seem to watch it those first 2 weekends, or those first 2 weeks. Because what's a weekend even now, Bill? What's a weekend? And then I think what happened was I think people saw the movie.
and it's frustrating. It's got some good parts and some bad parts.
You and I are going to talk about this, but I don't think the quality of the movies really matters for this conversation. Because I think part of this weird year is, and what I was trying to get at earlier is, if nothing had changed about this year and the pandemic just happened, the pandemic doesn't happen, and you have the same movies opening, including Tenet, including The Way Back, but Tenet doesn't work, and The Way Back is fine, but I mean, it's a movie built to let this actor give a good performance.
Yes. Kind of like On the Rocks. On the Rocks is built for Bill Murray to try to win an Oscar.
Don't even.
I know, we already litigated that movie.
Don't even do that to Ben Affleck. Somebody's trying.
Yeah. Fair.
So I think, the movies this year are not that good. They just aren't. I look at the things that are like the major candidates for these, 5 to 10 slots.
It's
and
shocking.
I'm like,
it's shocking.
What? These movies? Are you kidding me? They're very, I actually think as a class of movies, it'll be a great class of movies to just be able to say that these were your 5 to 10 Academy Award Best Picture nominees, but not a one of them is a great movie.
Right.
And some of them are just embarrassing. We can talk about that in a second, but I think The Five Bloods, its quality is somewhat separate from the thing that wound up happening to it, which is, and I'm just going to say this, I don't think quality really matters in the scheme of what we're talking about with these Oscars. Quality is a completely secondary or maybe tertiary aspect of what we're dealing with here. I mean, people might like some of these movies. I like a couple of them, but we're not really talking about any of these movies being great. They're all important for various reasons.
Well, we're hitting this weird time with art. I think movies are being felt the most with this. What a movie tried to do, what a movie represents, who made the movie is now being factored in as one of the main ingredients of how people felt about the actual quality of the movie.
Yes.
And
that's been happening for a while.
For a couple years, but this year especially. And it's led to this point where I do feel like there's probably people out there who are a little afraid to be critical of movies the way we used to be. Where if a movie stands for something beyond just here's a 2-hour thing, people start tiptoeing and they start walking around eggshells and they're afraid to be critical because if you're critical, then you're a fucking asshole.